says you're kind of like Superman. Can you take pride in that? You know? Well, thank you. What a warm welcome. I have to start tonight by saying what a pleasure it's been to be here in Brandon. It's been years since I've been out here. I live in Winnipeg, and it has been just an absolutely wonderful couple of days. Had the opportunity to be here and speak last night, spent the day in the school this afternoon talking to a bunch of 5th graders, 6th, 7th, 8th graders, and we just had a fantastic time talking about Parkinson's and the amazing race, and last night the good things that God does in our life because of all of these things. So it's just been an absolutely wonderful opportunity to be here, and thank you for coming out tonight. So, Barack Obama. If I had $1 for every time, I wouldn't be here. I'd be on a beach somewhere, retired. Thank you, I like him. It's an honor, I think. We'll see how his healthcare goes. Parkinson's. Well, first of all, let's talk about the race for just a second. If you ever want to know how to get on the Amazing Race Canada, well, there you go. Toques, scarves, boxers, brown men, and snow. Most of you can't do the brown men and snow bit, but the rest you can give a try. And that's what got us started on our the crazy road that continues called the Amazing Race Canada. With that video and some interviews, and away we went. How many of you watched the show? I know he asked earlier. Oh, a much better crowd than last night. Last night it was like, you folks get out. Oh, they are balance in life. If you didn't watch the show, it always warms my heart to know that not everybody's glued to their television set all the time. So that's a good thing. Parkinson's disease, on the other hand, isn't such a great thing. And in February of 2011, I had the opportunity to have it introduced to my world. In August of 2010, I was sitting in my my kitchen, reading the newspaper, spending my usual Saturday morning routine, drinking coffee and reading the Winnipeg Free Press. And I'm sitting here, I'm a nurse, and I note my left big toe is twitching. I look down, and the very first thought that went through my head was, well, I'm not depressed, I'm not anxious, I'm not nervous, life is fine. This cannot be good. Because there are very few things in your body or in life that just cause you to twitch. And so you'll know tonight that I'm twitchy, I shake a little bit. It's not because I'm afraid of you. I can't do anything about it. Parkinson's disease is a neurodegenerative disease that starts way down the middle of your brain in a little place called the substantia nigra. I won't bore you with all the details. It basically means that my engine doesn't have the oil that it needs to work properly. Or in other terms, my neurons, the nerves don't talk to each other because I'm lacking a chemical called dopamine. That's the oil in my engine that doesn't work quite right. If that's still too complicated, let's just leave it with the fact that my brain doesn't work quite right. And if you ask my wife of 28 years, she'll tell you that it started long before 2010. There are about 6,000 of us in Manitoba that have this wonderful disease. Most of them are old, as in over 60. Okay, I'm sorry, that came out. I'm 48, I was diagnosed at 46. That's technically called young onset disease. And we're not supposed to get it until we're much older in chronological years. Well, I've been blessed with it much, much sooner than that. Along comes the Amazing Race Canada. We have this diagnosis. I sit on my rear end for a year depressed because that's what you do when you get a chronic disease or some bad thing happens to you. You shouldn't do that, that's what I did. Stop running, stop cycling, stop doing all my normal stuff. And a year later comes the Amazing Race Canada. Well, my dear wife, who has watched every single episode of The American, says, we're applying. And gentlemen, after 28 years, when your wife says, we're doing something, you say, yes, yes. All the wise, what's the spoke there? The rest of you are still too young and haven't quite figured it out. So she says, we're going to apply for this. I say to myself, you know, this would be fun. I enjoy the show. Sure, if some random miracle happened and we got on, this would be fantastic, but we're not going to get on. There's no chance of this happening. So, but nonetheless, yes, dear, we start the process. She starts reading. We find out that it takes a commitment of 5 weeks of your life to the show. You have to promise them that you will be away from your family, cut off, removed for 5 weeks. Well, both of us leaving our jobs and our 15-year-old twins, we have 4 children, 23-year-old, a 19-year-old, and 15-year-old twins. Well, leaving your 15-year-old twins at home for 5 weeks unsupervised is begging for trouble, no matter how good at children they are most of the time. So she came back and she very graciously said, we can't do that. I said, that's fine, I'll go back to work and on we go. She goes, no, you and Timothy are applying. Really? So after 28 years of marriage, Sheldon, what do you say? You say, yes. And inside I rolled my eyes, but right from the get-go she said, you're Tim and Tim, the camera likes you, you have Parkinson's, they love this stuff. I'm like, you watch way too much TV or something. She said, I promise you, and I guarantee you, these were her exact words, I guarantee you, you will get an interview. Well, needless to say, we spent half a day, put our little video together. It didn't take long because we weren't wearing much. And I do apologize. Right after dinner is a bit rude. But the rest is history. We put in our application. The closing day, they called first thing in the morning. I was absolutely flabbergasted that they actually called. And through that process, we ended up on the Amazing Race Canada. 10,000 applications from across Canada. Hundreds of interviews, 8 other very, very competitive teams. And not only did we manage to get on the show because of my Parkinson's, we managed to survive and win the thing in spite of my Parkinson's. And we are very, very, very grateful for the opportunities that God has given us through this ongoing adventure. Well, if you watch the race, you know one thing about the race, about our race. And that is that we ran a very mediocre race. No, actually, that's quite generous. Most of the time, we just sucked. You recall, now for those of you who didn't watch the show and may not be familiar, it's a reality TV show, as you've gathered, and it's like a giant scavenger hunt. So right across Canada, from coast to coast to coast, we traveled looking for things. Well, we started off in Niagara Falls, and in Niagara Falls, there was the butterfly place. And the very first thing the Tims did was, what did we do? We took, instead of the 2 clues, we took 1 clue, earning us the forever right to be the first team to get that 30-minute penalty right off the hop and get it wrong. In Drumheller, we got lost. You'll notice a trend, because in Quebec City, we got lost. In the Toronto Zoo, we got lost. In Newfoundland, it is the semis leading into the finals. We are 4 teams left. We are in 3rd position. We know that 1 team is behind us. All we have to do is get to the mat, and we are in the finals, running for the big money. We are running, chasing our tails, and we are lost. We cannot find the mat. We were navigationally challenged. We could not get our act together. And no matter how Winnipeg cheered for us, no matter how Manitoba supported us, and you guys did, from front to back, no matter how many times we looked like we were going to fall flat on our face, this province cheered for us and encouraged us every step of the way. But no matter how loud you yelled at your television sets, we couldn't get it together. And I've had all kinds of stories of popcorn and various things been thrown at the television. And, what are you doing? Again! But it seemed to be our race. That seemed to be what we were meant to do. So we get to Drumheller. It's the 4th leg of the race. Last night I said 3rd. I've been misquoting it. It's the 4th leg of the race. And we have come in last. Now, knowing the game, we knew that there are almost always, in the American show, there's always 2 non-elimination legs. Non-elimination leg means you come in last, but they don't kick you off. I knew I had a 50-50 chance of this being a non-elimination leg, and we were so hopeful. We were actually terrified. because we had survived the one thing my children had asked me. The 3 kids staying at home said, "Dad, if you can just do this one thing, please, nothing else matters. Don't embarrass us. Don't be the first ones off the race." So we had survived our first few legs. But here we are in Drumheller. We're dead last. We're coming to the mat. We come up. John says, "Tim and Tim, I'm sorry to inform you that you're the last to arrive. However," what a beautiful word. However, it's a non-elimination leg. I have to tell you that we went back to our hotel that evening, and we were mad. We were not having fun. There was about 20% of me that was ready to give up and go home. I was fed up with how I was running this race. I was fed up with the fact that my body wouldn't work right, that I was shaky, that I was tired, that I was cranky, I wasn't eating right. It just wasn't fun. Now, how many of you like tattoos? I personally can't stand them. Each of my elder children have each said, from nearly birth, "Dad, we want tattoos." And we say, "No, you cannot have a tattoo. That is sin." I'm sure there's a verse somewhere. We tell them, when you are an adult in my house being 18, you're the age of majority, you can go get as many tattoos as your money will buy. But prior to 18, not a chance. On their 18th birthday, my first and second children went and got tattoos. So that tells you one of two things. Either I'm a lousy arguer or I have nothing to argue about. I'm not sure which it is. But my son has 2 tattoos. He has one here on the inside of his bicep, which is a symbol of the Trinity. On his back, he has Psalms 46:10. My 19-year-old daughter has on her left foot the verse, "Where you go, I will go." Well, I may not like tattoos, but man, do I like what they put on themselves. That night in Drumheller, in our angst and in our anger and our frustration, we rediscovered Psalms 46:10. And it says in the NIV, "Be still and know that I am God." In another translation, it says, "Cease striving and know that I am God." And the thing that God brought home to us that evening was that we were running this race under our own power. We had decided that we were going to win this race no matter what it took, under our ability, under our desire, and that God had very little to do with it. Now, for some, they'll say, what's wrong with striving? You look up Mr. Google and he talks about striving as being to struggle or to fight forcefully. Well, if you're self-employed, a lot of you know what it means to have to fight through something hard to get to where you want to be. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that migraine-inducing, heart attack-producing, ulcer-giving, gnawing, grinding, win and do this at all cost kind of mindset that destroys us. And that's where we were at with our race. We sat down that night and we said, you know what? There's something wrong with 2 guys who have beat out 10,000 other applicants to be one of 9 on the Amazing Race Canada. If you can't be happy in this moment, if you can't enjoy the context of your life at this moment, there's not anything wrong with the race. There's something wrong with you. And we had a long chat with one another and with God, and we decided then and there that we were going to stop. That we were just going to stop and restart. And the first thing we were going to do is have fun. The second thing we were going to do was just our best. Just our level best. Cease striving. Cease that activity that goes from nothing to mediocre to your best to this, whatever you call that, whatever it looks like, but that point in life where you're having no fun, even though you're on Canada's number 2 all-time rated television show in history. Because that's just dumb. So we came back over here. We started having a good time. We decided we were going to do our absolute best and be content with that. And I would like to suggest to you that with this newfound happiness, our gameplay completely changed. It did not. We continued to suck.